So you want to start a fast-growing YouTube channel in 2023. Well, my friend Tom was in your shoes.
Hey everyone, before we get into the stories, I have to give a disclaimer for story number 1, as it does mention some form of sexual assault. I just had to mention that before we begin. All that being said, I hope you enjoy these stories. This is one of my favorite topics, so if you have a story like this with a creepy neighbor, consider sending it in at southerncannibal.com. Without any more interruptions, let's go ahead and get started. And remember to always stay hungry.
My name is Sarah. I'm a 25-year-old female, and ever since I was a little girl, I've been able to see things that others can't. Whenever someone tells you something like that, it most likely means that they had a hard time growing up. Children with this gift simply don't understand their sensitivity to energies and how to safeguard against them. Having parents that are either closed off to the paranormal or simply won't accept it can be even harder. But we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. I shared that information with you to illustrate that this encounter wasn't my first experience with ghosts. I was a teenager back then, and I was hanging out with my then good-for-nothing boyfriend. I don't remember what we were talking about when the topic got brought up, but he mentioned, "I don't know what happened here before you moved in, but this place is definitely haunted, babe. I always get this creep out feeling when I go upstairs." I hadn't really talked to him about my clairvoyance, so I was a bit intrigued. Ghosts did not scare me by this point. I had grown out of the proverbial "I see dead people" stage. After showing me around the house, I sensed a spirit wandering the upstairs hallway before disappearing into his sister's bedroom. The second time I encountered this spirit was the night of his sister's baby shower. There was some family drama happening that night, and a fight broke out, because apparently they couldn't work things out like adults. I walked upstairs to grab something. At the time, the upstairs hall lights out. The wiring had gotten messed up by some workers they hired, and the bulbs kept burning out within days of being replaced. So in true horror story fashion, I used my phone's flashlight to get around. Something was different about this night. Spirits react to drama just like we do, and become more active, and even aggressive in some cases. I got what I came for and was heading back toward the stairwell. I got a feeling I was being gazed at by something very angry. I stopped for a moment, looking back down the hallway, trying to tell if I was just being paranoid or if something was actually there. Then, out of the shadows, an angry-looking man came charging right at me. Now, I pride myself on being a strong, not easy-to-scare woman, but I took off down the stairs when I saw that shit. I knew that what I saw was paranormal in nature. It's hard to explain, but the man I saw looked like he was incomplete. There were features of him missing, and his overall appearance was transparent, like he was a projection that came to life. He was angry about something. All that built-up negative energy can be dangerous, even to somebody like me. I couldn't just write it off, but I told myself that the apparition appeared because of all the fighting that was going on downstairs, and it would soon disappear. This was the first time in a very long time that I had seen something that actually frightened me. A few nights later, I showed up at my boyfriend's house, and once again found myself at the top of the stairs. His bedroom was also located in this hallway, so as I walked to his door, I noticed that the bathroom light was on. It wasn't common for him to leave the light on, but the door was also slightly cracked, casting a triangular shape on the carpet. I then saw something in the aperture, which instantly blocked the light coming through. At first, I thought it was my boyfriend, so I opened the door. My happy smile quickly fell to a confused, disturbed look, as I realized no one was there. I ran to the bedroom and flung open his door. There was my ex in his bed, on his phone. He looked up at me, confused for a moment. Let me guess, you saw something in the bathroom. After discussing it for a bit, we eventually went about our night, but I couldn't shake off what I saw. I had a feeling deep down that something terrible had happened here a long time ago and left behind a dark presence. My boyfriend and I weren't together much longer after that night. His family no longer lives at that house.
If that had any paranormal events, activities, I'd love to talk to you about it, and maybe do a one-on-one session with anyone who is interested in talking about paranormal-related ghost stories that they may have encountered personally, in that regard. So I'll just continue the story.
I've been told by two different psychics that I have a dark entity attached to me, following me wherever I go.
Been told by two different psychics that I have a dark entity attached to me, following me wherever I go. Neither of them were privy to my experience at my ex-boyfriend's house. After the breakup, a lot of things in my life changed. I've always wondered if whatever was inside his house attached itself to me, but who really knows? Whenever I'm alone, I can feel him staring at me. I don't know who he was, but I have this inkling that he was a miserable human being when he was alive, full of hate and anger. What's left of him now?
I got Philip once, as a name from the ghost. Oh, apparently I stopped it.
Tries to torment anyone who crosses his path. But again, that's just a hunch. I've seen his face so many times that I can accurately sketch it on a drawing pad. I plan on talking to someone who knows the history of my town, and perhaps they can help me find out who exactly this man was. I am a 27-year-old female. This happened 6 months ago. I used to be skeptical of any claims involving encounters with the paranormal until this experience. I've been babysitting 3 children, Tracy, who is 10, Mike, who is 8, and Sally, who is 4. I've never really had hard times with them, aside from a few tantrums, which is normal. One day, their mother called me to ask if I could babysit for 6 days, while she and her husband went on a business trip. I needed the money, and I love these kids as if they were my own. The first 3 nights, everything was normal. But the 4th night is where things changed for the worse. That night, the kids and I were watching cartoons until it was time for them to go to bed. For context, all 3 children slept in the same room, since Mike's bedroom was being remodeled. Sally was the most difficult to tuck in since she was younger and had the most energy. When I finally got Sally to sleep, I went downstairs to watch TV. When suddenly, I heard Sally's ABC toy. It was one of those learning toys with letters as buttons. I instantly thought that Sally had gotten out of bed and had begun to play. Annoyed, I got up from the couch and went upstairs. But when I opened the bedroom door, I saw all 3 of them fast asleep. I looked down and noticed that there were no toys on the floor. I checked inside the closet, where all their toys were kept, looking for that specific one that I heard. But I couldn't find it, which made no sense. I had clearly heard it going off when I was downstairs. Suddenly, I heard it again, but this time, it came from downstairs.
Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sing with me?
My stomach dropped to the point where I just froze in place. Now, I knew for a fact that Sally wasn't behind this. Someone, or something, was in the house.
Go with the ladder.
I quickly went downstairs and found the toy resting on the dining room table. It definitely was not there before.
ABCs, come sing with me.
I nearly jumped out of my skin. I grabbed it and took out the batteries. "Darlene, what's wrong?" I heard Tracy from the top of the stairs. It's nothing, sweetie. Go back to bed." I didn't know what to make of the night's events. I placed the batteries in the drawer and checked on the children. When I entered the room, Tracy sat up in her bed, and I sat next to her and assured her that everything was okay. "You're lying. I know when you're scared." Confused, I looked at her and said, "I just had a bad dream, that's all." She slowly shook her head. "Sebastian scared you." "Who's Sebastian?" She then turned to face the wall. "Don't let him scare you, Darlene. He just wants to play with Sally's toy." What the hell? Now I was very confused and a bit freaked out. I didn't want to ask her any more questions, so I just left the room. I didn't get any sleep that night.
No one would get any.
The following night, I was able to sleep since nothing unusual had happened that day. That was until around 4 a.m.
No reasonable person will get
I
sleep.
heard whispers outside of my bedroom door. It was still dark out. I rubbed my eyes and got up to check out the noises. It was coming from the children's bedroom, which was across from mine. I carefully approached the door and pressed my ear up to it. The voices were definitely coming from the other side of the door. Figuring that the kids were up, I opened the door. It was just Tracy sitting on the rug. She looked up at me with a surprised look on her face. "Tracy, what are you up to?" Nothing. "You need to go to bed. And who were you talking to?" Tracy just stared at me with a blank expression. Tracy, I heard you talking to someone. You need to tell me who it was. Sebastian is upset that you don't give him the same attention you give us. He keeps trying to get your attention so you can play with him. All the hairs on my body stood up. Tracy, that's not funny. Now you go to bed. We'll talk about this later. Sebastian wants your attention now. By this point, Mike and Sally had woken up. Tracy, Sebastian has to leave you alone. Mike groaned. So all of you know about Sebastian? I asked. They all nodded. Thankfully, their parents were coming back that day, because I wanted to get out of there.
Who wouldn't? Honestly.
Fast forward to about an hour before their arrival. Tracy didn't want to eat the sandwich I made for her. Mike and Sally had no problem, and were out playing in their backyard once they were finished. Tracy, you've been sitting here for over an hour not touching your food. By this point, I admit that I was getting irritated with Tracy. She was the oldest of the three, and I didn't expect this kind of behavior from her. She then looked at me and said, "Where's Sebastian's sandwich?" I tried playing along. "Where is Sebastian now?" "He's holding onto your leg." My body froze. Just imagining that made my stomach turn. I tried to maintain my composure and stay calm and positive. "Well, Sebastian, if you don't sit down, I won't make you a sandwich." Tracy smiled, while looking down at where I was standing. I was really hoping her parents would get home very soon. I made an extra sandwich and placed it next to where Tracy was sitting. The extra sandwich and placed it next to where Tracy was sitting. The things we have to do for kids sometimes. He says thank you.
All the time.
Don't ask me why, but that did make me feel better. Eventually her parents arrived. Once they greeted us and settled in, the mom noticed the untouched sandwich on the table, asking why it was there. Tracy and the other children were already outside with their father playing at this point. I lowered my voice and said, "The kids claim that a boy named Sebastian lives here, who wants my attention, and Tracy refused to eat until I made him a sandwich." The mother's eyes widened. "You said Sebastian?" "Yeah. Have you heard that name before?" We sat down on the couch, and I told her everything that transpired while she was away. When I told her about the boy, she recalled it happening to them every other night, but had gotten used to it. A little warning would have been nice. She ended up explaining that the family who lived here before them had a 4-year-old son who died in that house, and the family moved out shortly after. When they moved in, Tracy was just a newborn baby. When she became a toddler, the mother noticed how Tracy would talk by herself, and as she continued to grow and was able to express herself more, she would say that a boy named Sebastian was sad and always wanted to play with her, especially at night. The mom naturally thought it was an imaginary friend, but as the days passed, it became clear that something else might have been going on. Tracy would argue with literally no one and complain that one of her toys went missing, later appearing in a locked shed in the backyard. There was no way that Tracy could have put it there. This creeped the parents out, but they were in no position to just move out, so they decided that they would just have to deal with it. This little boy might have been annoying, but he wasn't hurting anyone. When Mike and Sally noticed Tracy was staying up at night and playing by herself, Mike made it a routine to tell her to stop and go to bed. Tracy had told me about Sebastian liking you since you started babysitting for us, but I told her not to tell you anything because it might have frightened you. It would just destroy us if you left, but it would be understandable. Of course, all of this happened unexpectedly. Sebastian did creep me out, but he didn't do any harm. It actually made me feel bad for him. Besides, I couldn't just leave these kids after developing such a strong bond with them. As I mentioned before, I see them as my own. So I decided to keep babysitting them. After that experience, nothing out of the ordinary happened, other than having a few items misplaced. Over time, I've slowly adapted to it. Before this happened, I didn't believe in the paranormal. But you have to experience it for yourself
whether you like it
to
or
have
not.
your mind completely changed.
That's true. Because when it comes to paranormal and paranormal events, they believe in you no matter what. Yeah, because you can't get away from the paranormal or ghosts. At all. Let's see. Let's see. 10. And you know what? I don't remember what the hell was what for when I did the back, the sides, and everything when I did my Mandalorian helmet, so let's try and blind on this one. And then I do remember that 13 goes in the front. Yeah, 13 goes in the front. Alright, so I'm picking another one, which is to also give you some context. Window capture, let's do it this way, sure. Yeah, I have a lot of tabs open, I am aware. I am aware.
Should I be frightened of my house, or can I just be over it? My family and I, my dad, my sister, and my mom, moved into this house when I was 6. When we first moved, I hated it here. I was constantly scared and seeing shadows and hearing weird stuff. And once I even jumped out of the shower with shampoo all over my head and ran downstairs crying to my mom because I felt someone breathe next to my ear. I would have friends over, and when we were alone in the house, we would hear things and be scared. Almost the whole home is wood flooring, and we'd hear creaking like someone was walking around. Throughout this time in our new home, I found out later that my parents were hearing music coming from the attic while they were in bed. Piano music, sometimes radio music. My father is someone who takes no shit, and I've never seen him be scared of anything. So we walked right up and pulled down the stairs to the attic and check it out. As soon as he got to the top, the music would stop. He checked the whole attic and there was nothing that could produce music. My mother told me this years later as she knew I was already too afraid. So in my high school years, I would go to bed and lock my door at night. But my dad wasn't one to knock, and I was often doing things I shouldn't be doing in there. And one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and mind you, I'm a person that you have to shake to wake, and to my doorknob being violently shaken in its locked state. Seeing the hour, I jumped out of bed and opened the door immediately, assuming it was my dad or something was wrong. No one was there. I go back to sleep thinking I must be dreaming or crazy or something. This happened a total of 2 or 3 times over a fairly large span of years. I've also had knocks on my door in the middle of the night and early morning. My response is usually, yeah, nobody enters. I open the door, nobody there. The last isolated incident I can remember was in 2016. I was working at a salon, and the owner's daughter, who I became quite close to, died of an overdose. Our birthdays were 3 days apart, and we'd always celebrate together at the salon. She had just passed in January, and it was her birthday night. It was late, 1 or 2 a.m. I was on the toilet in my bathroom and happened to be thinking about her. I said out loud, "Happy birthday, Bonnie." And boom, start hearing wild piano music above me in the attic. I freaked out and ran downstairs, woke up my mom, who was sleeping on the couch because my parents no longer slept in the same bed. And this is when she told me about the music when I was a kid. So 2 weekends ago, there was nothing good on TV on Sunday, surprise, surprise. So I put on Unexplained. For those of you who don't know, it's a ghost hunting show with qualified people doing the hunting, paranormal investigators and mediums. I kind of like the thrill of being scared watching stuff, but I don't like being scared in my own home. My mom and I watched for a few hours until I went to pick up food. I took her car because it was easier. There was this water bottle on her back seat swishing around and making noise in the car. I had been in her car the day before running hours worth of errands and didn't notice this at all. I felt a weird presence and scaredness while I drove. I told myself I'm just creeping myself out because of the show. That night, I go to bed, all good, not thinking about anything scary. At 9 a.m. I wake up to 4 soft knocks on my bedroom door. I assume it's Mom and I say, "Yeah?" Nothing. I go back to sleep for an hour or 2. Wake up later and ask her if she knocked on my door this morning. Answer is no. So the very next night I go to sleep. I have this old Harman Kardon speaker and bass in my bedroom. It's 4 a.m. and the thing is humming, like loud and creepy. Hum, hum, hum. Each one of the tones sounds like it's more echoey and closer. I quickly turn on the phone's flashlight. It stops immediately. I've grown older in this house, and for a very long time I stopped feeling scared. I was watching that show and having odd things come back to light, and the spirit's own way of telling me they're still here. I don't know. Rant over.
Don't go paranoid when you think there's a presence. Because they make it pretty known if they're demonic.
Shape-shifting spirit outside my home? Yesterday, a strange encounter left me feeling bewildered and unsure of what to do next. As I stepped outside my home, I came face to face with a spirit whose appearance was constantly shifting, as if they were undergoing a never-ending process of digital art editing. Their features were never static, changing every few seconds. It was hard to keep up with the rapid pace of transformation. To make matters more perplexing, the spirit commented on my distracted state of mind, which was due to my attempt of astral planning being disrupted by my fiance's loud snoring. Despite the strange circumstances, I didn't feel any overtly negative energy emanating from the spirit, but rather a sense of deep desperation and longing that left me feeling quite moved. The spirit then asked if it could come inside my home, to which I promptly declined, quickly returning to my body and reinforcing the house's protective barriers. However, despite my immediate reaction, I couldn't shake the sense that the spirit had been wandering aimlessly for a long time. searching for something that they couldn't seem to
when I
find.
get to it, but
As I am situated close to a school, I also received a strong intuition that the spirit spends a lot of time around children, which only added to my growing concern. Feeling a strong desire to help this lost soul, I'm now seeking any insight or guidance that can help me in my efforts to release them from their current predicament. There's a ghost in my laundry room. One day, as I was going to go do laundry, I went to close the laundry door, but to my surprise, I couldn't. It was as though something or someone was holding the door back. As I walked into the room, I felt an icy cold breeze that was uncharacteristic of the usually hot and stuffy laundry room. And in that moment, I realized that a ghost was present in my laundry room. At first, the thought of calling a priest or a paranormal investigator crossed my mind. However, upon further reflection, I realized that this ghost was harmless and only wanted to play around.
alright, so, the only few reasons why you should be contacting a paranormal investigator or a priest is if there is an extreme case of hauntings. So if you got a lot of activity where you feel unease, you got feelings of dread, not in the whole basement or attic aspect, because you know what I'm talking about, but in reference to needing a paranormal investigator, just to have that, avid curiosity, and they can be costly, and you could get a paranormal investigator who knows how to do a cleansing, either by saved or if they know the proper verses of the Bible to christen the house, in a sense. You don't have to believe in religion to have a priest either visit your house, but to cleanse your house of any portals or spirits and that, do your research before you get to that point, and know the occurrences of what can transpire if you do have paranormal activity in your house, because that's the difference between playing with fire with a match, with water, or gasoline. Know your surrounding before you get to that point, believe me.
Although it could be unsettling to hear the laundry room door slowly open by itself, or feel its presence, it never caused me any harm. Initially, the ghost used to hold the door back frequently and prevent me from closing it. However, after a while, it seemed to grow bored of this activity and stopped doing it. It still lingers in the laundry room, not really doing anything, but I know it's there. Overall, despite the spooky nature of the situation, it's become part of my everyday life, and I've grown accustomed to the presence of this friendly ghost.
Some can be friendly, not all. Some can be friendly. And you also gotta remember, some ghosts don't cross over.
There was a banging on my closed bedroom door, and no one was there. I'm visiting my sister and sleeping in their only spare bedroom, because her two kids have the other rooms. These bedrooms are upstairs. My sister and her husband sleep in the only bedroom on the first floor. There's a sliding window in my bedroom, and it was closed during what happened to me. It was around 7 p.m. when the 3 2-year-old nephews were playing those push toys on the downstairs hardwood floor. I was upstairs in my bedroom playing my Nintendo Switch at the foot of the bed that's near the door to the upstairs hallway. Because of the kids' noise, I shut my door to limit it. Maybe 10 to 15 minutes later, I heard my 2 9-year-old make a yelp, which made me realize my sister's putting him to bed. He's still at the age where he sleeps in a crib, and my sister shuts her kid's door when they go to bed. The lights in the bedroom, hallway, 3-year-old nephew's bedroom, and my bedroom had their lights on. This is what happened. As I said before, I was playing my Switch, and then there was this constant banging on the door. I immediately thought that she was mad that the TV volume was too loud or something's wrong. I jumped from the bed and opened the door. No one was there. In a split second, I started panicking and ran for the stairs. The stairs are halfway across the living room downstairs, where I saw my sister and her friends hanging around the 3-year-old nephew as they watched a kids show. I asked her, "Were you knocking on my door?" And she replied with some worried look on her face and said, "No, I didn't." What do I make out of all this? I can't think of an explanation for what happened. I never suspected my 2-year-old nephew, stuck in his crib escaping, opening the door, and knocking and rushing back inside. The amount of time it took me to open the door was a few seconds, and I would have caught him rushing back to his room. There's no history of any terrible events happening at my sister's house. No one died there. There were no murders there. I know because my sister's house is the house I grew up in, and it was a new construction home. I'm baffled by...
Alright, so, there are some things that you can't explain, and if it's in any new neighborhood, chances are there's a lot of older bodies that could be buried, even if they're not on consecrated grounds of a church. There could still be buried individuals elsewhere, especially on farms. There could be buried individuals who, maybe from the 18 to the early 1900s, that were buried. Long story short, when it comes to new construction and over time dirt does pile up, layering, the whole artifacts in the ground kind of deal, there are certain areas, despite what, because when I heard new construction, my first thought was, oh great, Indian burial ground or an old settlement cemetery. Those are the first things that always come to mind, and believe me, it's never any fun when you come across that stuff. Because my sister, when she was living in an area in the south end of Barrie, on the Essa, around the Essa-Barrie border township area, my nephew was, sleeping, and then everything would get bunched up against his door, preventing the door from being open, basically. So, yeah, needless to say, my sister, I think because between my mom and my older sister, they kind of have a psychic medium aspect to them, which I can say for sure that they do have those kind of traits. Where my sister, being kind of a medium, she is not trained, mind you, so she doesn't have her mind fully open, but she does have, an insight into mediumism, and she did actually allegedly say that she spoke to an Indian who was messing with my nephew's group. Needless to say, they did move out eventually, not because of that, but many, many, and many other reasons because of that. Long story short, yeah, if it's always new build, there could be something in the ground that you just can't explain. People could put ashes in the ground, or if there's a fire, then there was no body claimed. Well, there you go. There's your answer.
What happened, but weirdly, I got a thrill out of it.
Never get a thrill out of it. That's begging for accidents to happen.
Did I witness a spirit leave the place they died? When I was a mere 11 years old, my father and I made a life-changing decision to relocate from Spain to Germany. We settled into an apartment that had previously been occupied by an old man who, according to the hearsay, passed away peacefully in his sleep. At the time, I was unaware of this, but I would soon come to realize the gravity of the situation. As I lay in bed at night, there loomed a massive pitch-black shadow that seemed to emanate from the corner of my room. It cast an eerie pall over the surroundings. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that came with it. At first, I assumed it was just my overactive imagination, perhaps fueled by the depression I was experiencing due to my recent move and other personal issues. But as the months and years wore on, I began to question the shadow's origins. Nothing in my room could have possibly cast such a deep, inky blackness into just one corner. I was stumped, and it nagged me like a persistent itch.
Having an back.
Then one fateful day I stepped out of the shower and into my room, only to be greeted by a sudden blinding flash of light that emanated from the very corner where the shadow had taken up residence. The brightness was so intense, it startled me to my core, and I fled to the living room couch to seek refuge from the night. When I returned to my bedroom, the shadow was nowhere to be found. It was as if the light had dispelled it once and for all. From that moment on, the room no longer felt creepy or unsettling. I never saw the shadow again, and as the years passed, I found myself wondering if the old man had once lived there and had somehow remained unable to depart until that fateful night. Now I'm almost 16 years later. I still reside in the same apartment, but my father, who had been my companion on this particular journey, has passed since. The memory of that shadow in the light particularly that banished it, lingers with me, and I can't help but wonder if it was a manifestation of something supernatural or simply a figment of my imagination. Nonetheless, it remains a mysterious and indelible part of my personal history.
So what I think I'll do in the future is I'll get a podcast going on a topic that obviously the paranormal.
What do I do with this doll? My dog thinks it's haunted.
Interested me.
I have a doll that I bought at an antique shop, and I'm not sure what to do with it. I'm not a doll person, but I saw this Japanese, I think, doll set up high in the corner shelf, priced at $1, and I bought it along with a 3-piece vanity mirror. I don't know exactly why I got the doll, but I felt sorry for her or something. Her hair was poorly glued on and only halfway attached. She was covered in dust. She had a kind of, maybe a happier, kind-looking face. I felt bad that she was priced so low. I brought her home and cleaned her up a bit, and put her on the shelf of our bedroom with a couple of Japanese carvings from my grandpa. My mom was born in Tokyo and spent most of her childhood there, although we're born PNW white people.
And there's a movie I do want
The
to watch.
same weekend I got the doll, I brought her home, and my one dog Bonnie starts freaking out. She's my favorite of our 3. Probably the best dog I've ever had. She's a little 11-year-old chocolate lab, and has always been easy, simple, happy. And she's never had a care in the world, and that changed. Although I didn't connect the two situations at first. Bonnie's always been the easiest dog in the world, but she became clingy, extremely anxious and destructive. She didn't want to come into my room to sleep anymore, and would pant, whine, and try to leave if I called her in. One day I left and came right back because I forgot something, and I heard her barking, like her life depended on it, and it turned out she was standing and barking at my closed bedroom door. I also started having some worsening problems. I've had issues with insomnia, and I'm pretty well versed on it, but it became far worse than I ever thought possible. I started having night terrors, and one in particular is what brought me here. I had the doll on my shelf for about a week, and was questioning whether I wanted to keep her, or also whether I wanted the antique mirror that I bought at the same time and put on the dresser and kept in my room. The same night, I dreamt I couldn't move and there was a presence that wasn't letting me speak or move. Well, during this nightmare, the freaking mirror shattered and woke me up. It was the middle of the night, made an enormous mess, but at least I woke up. I moved a bunch of the stuff, including the doll, to a storage closet. But we're always under some kind of home renovation, so there's no doors, just a curtain. Bonnie didn't waste much time. She tried to dig her way into the closet, which is where I stashed the doll. She had never in her life done anything like this. Bonnie's become easily stressed and doesn't want to be without us in the house. I tried putting her in a crate that she used to like as a youngster, but she stopped needing it when we needed the space. She cracked a tooth trying to escape. We began taking her everywhere with us, in our car, and even though it's pretty cold out, she prefers to come with us rather than be at home without us. The weird thing to me is that the other dogs don't care about the doll at all. I want to get rid of the doll, but I just don't think throwing her away is the right approach. Maybe some kind of burial. I just don't want to make things worse, but I'm not sure what to do next. I could give the doll away, but what if it's really haunted or something? I don't want anyone else to be negatively affected. I was thinking of going back to the store and leaving her where I got her. But is that a good idea?
Alright, so what I'll do is, yeah, I'll do this one. Why not?
This is an experience I had when I was 16 years old during the winter. Since the incident, I still can't go outside on snowy days. Back then, whenever it snowed, there was something I always did. It was called snowman smashing. Paul, George, and I would gather in the village on snowy days, look for snowmen that other people had made, and have fun destroying them as we found them. But one day, we discovered a strange snowman. The snowman was as big as an adult, wearing a black cloak, and had deeply carved eyes and mouth. Paul put his hand inside the snowman's mouth and screamed, pulling his hand out quickly. His hand was bleeding. It turned out that there were many blades inside the snowman's mouth. In rage, Paul shouted, "Whoever dared make me bleed shall bleed too." He started to remove the snowman's cloak. Then Paul walked back and ran toward the snowman, smashing it with a flying kick. We cheered in delight. But something came out of the broken snowman's body. It looked like some sort of heart. We screamed and ran away. Later, the police investigated and found out that it was a goat's heart. However, they couldn't figure out who had put it there. That night before bed, I felt an inexplicable sense of fear. It was as if incredibly cold air was entering my room. Even tightly wrapped in a blanket, my body shivered, and I couldn't sleep all night. Since that day, I have been tormented by the feeling that the cold air has followed me all day long. Winter break ended, and I went to school and received some shocking news. Paul had died. It turned out that one day, Paul had jumped and tried to deliver a flying kick to another snowman, but slipped and fell backward, breaking his neck and dying. George and I were at a loss for words. We didn't say it, but we both felt a sense of shared terror. Since then, a sinister atmosphere loomed over the village, and all parents sternly warned their children never to smash snowmen. However, after some time, another heavy snowfall occurred, and as usual, a snowman wearing a black cloak was built in the middle of the village the next day. Some foolish children smashed the snowman, and shortly after, a boy in the neighborhood choked to death on a candy. He was one of the children who had smashed the snowman. After that, the parents in the village never allowed their children to go outside on snowy days and locked their doors tightly. Thus, no one walked around the streets on snowy days. Nevertheless, the day after heavy snowfall, the snowman with the black cloak would always appear in the middle of the street, but no one dared to touch it. As time went by, the snowman no longer appeared in the village, and fortunately, no more tragedies occurred. However, since then, mentioning the snowman in the village has been strictly forbidden. To this day, it remains unsolved who made that snowman and what it was. It's still an unresolved mystery.
Probably just some fan who's going, "Hey, you okay, be knocking down those idea, man? Snowman? Like, seriously, what the heck?"
I used to work for pest control services in Louisiana. It was a tedious job with an awful chemical to smell 24/7. Once I got a booking from the outskirts. The client complained that she's facing a major cockroach infestation. The pay was good, so I drove to the place. There was a big wooden signboard with the name The Mannequin Farm written on it. That's an odd name for a farm. I rang the doorbell and waited. Minutes went by and no one opened the door. I knocked heavily this time and heard a feeble woman's voice from inside.
Coming, dear.
An old woman opened the door.
Are you from pest control?
Yes, ma'am.
Come in, dear.
I stepped into the house and the immediate smell of bleach and detergent hit me. Damn, no doubt she's having issues.
I tried to kill those vermin myself, but it doesn't work. Seems like they need a way more painful death to die.
You don't say. Suddenly, I heard a scratching sound behind a door on my right.
That's just my cat. A poor baby must be hungry. I'll feed him later.
She took me to her kitchen. I must say the house looked way cleaner than I expected. No dust and no garbage on the floor. It was a little weird to guess that such a tiny place can face pest issues. But then again, she was living on a farm near the woods, so it was possible. I kept my backpack on the kitchen floor and started my job. The old lady stood behind me and watched me work. Every time I turned to her, she gave me a huge grin, flashing her yellow, broken teeth. I started making small talk to avoid the awkward silence. So, you live alone, huh?
Yes. I never married. And also, I don't think anyone can live with me.
Why do you say that?
I'm an artist. It's hard to understand an artist.
I kept working, thinking the woman will leave me be, but she didn't. She just stood there and watched creepily. Do you mind if I use your washroom?
Down the hall on your right.
I crossed the dark hall and entered the bathroom. The light wasn't working. The morning sunlight coming from the window made the bathroom visible. I did my business. I pressed open the garbage can and saw a vicious sight. There was a skinless animal head inside it. Maggots were eating it inside out. I left the bathroom right that moment and straight walked to the main door to leave. I knew I had my keys in my pocket and I was sure to drive away. But after reaching the main door, I tried to twist the doorknob, but it was locked from the inside, probably with a key. The woman was nowhere to be found. That's when I heard the same sound I heard entering the house. The lady said it was her cat scratching the door from the other room. I walked close to it. It was locked too. I crouched down to look through the keyhole. At first, I saw nothing but darkness. And suddenly, I saw an eye looking at me. And immediately, I heard an inaudible cry of words followed by loud banging on the door. Who is it? Hello? Just then, I felt a strong blow at the back of my head, and I fainted. When I woke up, I could see drops of blood on my white shirt. My eyes took time to adjust to the lights. Suddenly, there were tons of lights. Once my vision cleared, I saw a skinny, tired man with a horrible physique sitting opposite of me. He was tied to a weird-looking chair. The chair was attached to a big platform kind of thing. There was a foul smell all around the room, even though it was crystal clean. Suddenly, the door opened and the old lady entered, but my stomach dropped once I saw her in the light. The lady was holding a wig in her hand, and the makeup was all diluted like she tried to wash it off. It wasn't a she, but a he. It was an old man dressed like a woman.
Sorry for the dramatic entrance. You see, I have to work hard to collect my raw material.
What do you do? Kill and then eat people?
I'm not a barbarian. As I said, I'm an artist.
Saying this, he walked to me and revolved my chair at the back. What I saw chilled my bones. On the other side of the room stood an exhibition of mannequins. Only they were made from skins.
Every mannequin has the skin of the animal it is representing. Most of them are wild animals. Those you can call my early works. And these 3 human are my latest creation. So, do you like my work?
Their human figures looked distraught. The man even used their real eyes and somehow didn't manage to fit them well, so the eyes were halfway hanging on the chin of the mannequin. He walked to the malnourished man and pressed a button on the chair. The chair started to shake violently, and a scary sound came from it. After 3 minutes, he stopped the chair, and the man was dead. His feeble, weak body couldn't take the pain.
I like skinning them without any wounds. It's a quite merciful method, you know.
He took off the dog leash from his neck and came to put me on it as his next raw material, but I used my brain. It was my only weapon then. I told him I would like to have the sandwich made by my wife before he starts starving me.
Fair enough. I'll bring your bag to you.
He brought me my bag and I started looking into it. I was unmarried. It was all a lie to buy time from my possible killer.
I had to check your bag for a knife or a gun. Hope you don't mind.
I don't need a knife or a gun, you son of a psycho! I grabbed the most poisonous chemical bottle I could find and splashed the liquid on his face. He screamed and fell to the floor, holding his face.
It's burning!
I got up and started running upstairs. I remembered seeing a balcony in the top bedroom. I reached it and jumped straight from the balcony. Once I got into the car, I started the engine. I heard a lock click and the farmhouse's main door opened. As I reversed the car, I could see the man standing on the porch. His half face was melted, yet he watched me with one eye, and then waved at me. I never went back to that farm. This was meant to be the best decision of our lives. I and my darling wife Maria had just acquired a 2-hectare strip of land, sitting in a small village in the state side of Nevada. We had always craved to experience life in the country, and seeing as she was due in 3 months, it seemed like the best time to make the move. The property came at a steal price, and to make things even more interesting, the realtor said it already had a cornfield on it. It was too good to be true. But if only I had known the truth, I would have torn up those deed papers there and then. When we arrived, the scenery was just as gorgeous and serene as we had dreamed. A small cottage was standing in front of us, and we could see the cornfield towering over it from behind. Maria walked towards the house with our pet dog Rex, while I carried out the rest of our stuff from the trunk. Suddenly, the dog began to bark incessantly like it had just seen the mailman. It bolted to the back of the house.
Rex, come back!
Maria called out, and she went after him. I was still very much preoccupied with the heavy bags when I suddenly heard a loud shriek. It was Maria's voice. My heart skipped a beat. Forthwith, I dropped everything and raced to the back of the house. Upon reaching there, Maria was panting heavily with her hand on her chest, while Rex seemed a lot more docile. "What is it?" I hastily asked.
Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I was just frightened by the scarecrow.
Maria responded. "The what?" I muttered to myself. Upon lifting my eyes, I was also left traumatized by the most disturbing and hideous-looking scarecrows I had ever seen in my life, and they were pegged all over the cornfield. Ultimately, it seemed like a problem for another day, so we just left it alone and made our way into the house. Later that evening, we heard 2 resounding knocks on our front door. We had only just moved in, so we definitely weren't expecting any visitors. I approached the door and swung it open. It was an offbeat and tattered-looking old man, and he had a dirty inverted cross around his neck. He just stared at me with a blank expression on his face. Can I help you with something?" I asked. "You cannot help me, but I can help you," he responded. He forcefully dragged my hand, took the cross off his neck, and placed it in my open palm. He was pretty strong for a man his age. I felt harassed. I immediately retracted my hand. "Hey, get your hands off me!" I barked in outrage.
There's no time to waste, son. The harvest is almost upon us. Hang the cross on your doorpost, or dire consequences shall follow.
The old man ominously warned. I was still trying to figure out what was happening. Before I could ask any questions, he turned and fled into the darkness. It was a very curious encounter, but not one I had the energy for. I shook my head and slammed the door closed.
Honey, who was at the door?
Nobody, sweetheart. Just a prankster. I responded. I momentarily glanced at the cross, then callously tossed it into the fireplace. By midnight, I was awakened by a very strange sound. It sounded like a clanging bell. I went downstairs in my PJs and drowsy eyes to investigate. The sound was coming from a grandfather clock in the living room, but what was most curious was the fact that I had never noticed the clock up until that night. The clock was also concealing a hidden door that had been chained shut. As I approached the clock, my eyes were drawn to window, where I met an even more bizarre sight. The scarecrows were all missing from their wooden posts. They were impossible to miss earlier, but at that moment, I couldn't even see one. Maybe it was just the extra glass of wine I had earlier. I turned around and stumbled back upstairs. My mind was probably just playing tricks on me. I observed the same phenomenon over a span of 3 days. By nighttime, the scarecrows were gone, but by morning, they would all return. I was bewildered. The villagers certainly put a lot of effort into their pranks. At least, that's what I believed. It wasn't until Rex went missing that I knew things had really gotten out of hand. I eventually found his decaying and maggot-infested body lying at the foot of one of those scarecrows within the cornfield. Blood was splattered all over the corn stalks, and a blood-drenched cleaver was lying beside him. Who could have done such a thing? I was still trying to figure out how to explain it to Maria when I suddenly bumped into the creepy old man again.
Did you hang the cross like I told you?
He abruptly asked. No, I burnt it. I responded, almost unapologetically. The old man hissed.
Such was the fate of your predecessors. Prepare your household. The harvest will begin after the 11th hour.
Hey, wait a minute. Do you know what happened to my... Before my eyes could transition from Rex's body and back, the old man had vanished without a trace. By midnight, just as he had said, I was awakened by the same clanging sound, but this time it was accompanied by a heavy ruckus coming from the cornfield. I peeped through the window to investigate, and a cold chill gripped my spine. It was unreal. It was petrifying. I became weak to my knees. The scarecrows were alive. Each of them wielded a crude farming tool, but it didn't look like they intended to plant seeds. In a panic, I grabbed my wife and hastily sprinted down the stairs, but before I could reach the front door, an axe was driven through it. They had encompassed the house and were forcefully trying to break in. Our last option was the eerie-looking door behind the grandfather clock. It was mysteriously now unlocked. We frantically charged into it. The door closed by itself. Within the room, we found dark scrolls, ancient relics, fetish ornaments, and sinister-looking books, all of which seemed to make mention of a curse and an ancient ritual called the Harvest. From what we could gather, if we had just placed the cross on our doorpost like the old man had cautioned, we would have been exempt from the reckoning. But since I was reluctant, our fate would pretty much be similar to our multitude of predecessors who were either rotting away or had already turned into piles of ashy bones within the cryptic room. God help us.
I need a broomstick.
Hi, I'm Paris, and last weekend was the strangest weekend of my life. I was blissfully sleeping in the car while my boyfriend Clark was driving. We were headed to this beautiful farmhouse next to a lake. It was our much-needed break after a month-long busy work schedule. I had closed my eyes and was enjoying the breeze when Clark suddenly applied the brakes of the car. I hit my head on the dashboard and woke up with a shock to see Clark closed his eyes in fear.
Clark! What the hell? What happened?
He opened his eyes and was even more terrified. I kept asking him what happened, but he didn't reply. He just got out of the car in a hurry and went out looking for something. I followed him out and was losing my patience with Clark's behavior. He looked around and said, "Where did he go? He was right here."
Who are you talking about? There's no one here.
He came out of nowhere. I got scared and stopped, but now he's missing. I thought Clark might have dozed off while riding and had a daydream. I told Clark to take a break from driving and I took the wheels. He was still worried and looking around, so I put on the radio and our favorite dance number was playing. I started to massage Clark's neck and told him to relax, and just when he was about to close his eyes, we arrived at the gate of the farmhouse, and what we saw at the gate gave us a shock. There was an old man holding a rifle and waiting for us. I got tense to looking at his rifle and asked him what the rifle is for. He looked at me with his rock-like face and told me, "For the wolves. I'm Mr. Parker. Welcome to Farmhouse where time stands still." The farmhouse was exactly like we had imagined. I told Clark to forget about what happened and have fun. Clark and I went inside, and the place and its decor was straight out of a fairy tale. I was happy and rushed to hug Clark, but Mr. Parker walked in between with the luggage and scared the hell out of me. Later in the evening, when we were asleep, I heard a loud gunshot and woke up. I came out to the balcony thinking Mr. Parker might have killed a wolf, but what I saw stunned me. There was a girl in a white flowing frock, like a bride, standing on the terrace with a rifle in her hand. I was both surprised and shocked to see her, because I thought there was no other guests in the farmhouse. I yelled out to her.
Hi!
She didn't reply. She just went away without even looking at me. I thought it was strange and wanted to find out more about her, so I came out of the room and was headed towards the stairs when someone tapped my shoulder. It was Mr. Parker. "Tea is served at the table by the lake. Please come, madam."
I saw a girl on the terrace. Is this the way up?
"That is a private area, madam. Guests are not allowed there. Please leave." I found this whole thing very strange, but I had no choice but to leave. I decided to get back in the night and check. While having tea, I told Clark about the girl. He was about to say something when we saw another girl coming out of the lake and walking towards the house without even drying herself off. We called out to her, but she did not respond, just like the other girl on the terrace. I got very curious now and asked Mr. Parker about the girls. "Guest information is confidential. Get ready for hunting." I did not understand what he meant by hunting and asked Mr. Parker. He said it was part of the farm stay experience. We both got excited, and a little while later we entered the woods nearby. Mr. Parker was our navigator. He pointed in a direction, and Clark took a shot but missed. It was my turn next. Mr. Parker listened carefully and then pointed in a direction. I aimed and took a shot. I heard the shrieking of an animal and rushed to look, but then Mr. Parker took out a Bluetooth speaker from the ground and told us that it was just a simulated game, and we had a good laugh about it. Later that night, Mr. Parker served us some delicious food. I casually asked him that I wanted the recipe, and he looked at me with a cold face and said, "It's human meat curry." We were shocked to hear this, but then Mr. Parker burst out into a monstrous laugh and told me that he'll give me the recipe when I leave from here. After dinner, I had decided to find out more about the girls, but the food Mr. Parker served us made us drowsy and put us to sleep in no time. And then suddenly, I heard a gunshot and woke up. I came out of the balcony to the girl standing on the terrace, like what happened the previous day. I came out of the room and was going towards the terrace when, just like the previous day, Mr. Parker tapped on my shoulder, stopped me from going upstairs, and told me that the tea is served by the lake. I was at the lake having tea when I saw the same girl coming out of the lake and walking away. The same thing was happening again. I tried to explain it to Clark, but then Mr. Parker came and called us for the hunting. At the hunting, Clark missed the first time, and when I took a shot, the animal shrieked in pain, but the Mr. Parker came and showed the Bluetooth speaker. I told Clark that I've lived this day before. Clark strangely did not believe me. At dinner, we ate the same food again. Mr. Parker made the same joke again. I was getting worried. But when I told Clark, he just asked me to rest, and we slept. I was woken up again by the gunshot, came out to see the same girl, and was again stopped at the stairs by Mr. Parker. The same girl came out of the pool. Then we went hunting. I shot, and Mr. Parker got the speaker, and then dinner, and we slept again. But this time I woke up early and went to the terrace and saw the girl coming out of a room. I walked towards her to find out what was happening, but she tried to shoot me. I ran from there and came to my room, woke up Clark and told him what had happened, and he was shocked. We had to save ourselves, so we sneaked out of the house, started my car, but Mr. Parker was at the gate aiming his rifle at us. I stopped for a moment and then hit the accelerator and drove past him as he tried to shoot at us. We drove away from there, but as we were about to hit the highway, we saw the same man who had stopped Clark before. He told us that he was also one of the guests there and was trying to get out. We didn't believe him at first, but he showed us his ID and begged us to help him. We asked him what was going on in that place, and he told us that the farmhouse was cursed, and whoever came there was stuck in a time loop and couldn't escape. We were lucky enough to get out of there alive, and we never returned to that place ever again.
Time loops? Really? Alright. Yeah, I know I said 10 minutes and it's greater than 10 minutes, so our apologies about that, chat. Alright, so, not bad for a makeshift Mando helmet, huh? Now I gotta find something to fill it in. Might spray it black with that, no. I'm gonna have to find something that's a little more friendlier. Maybe a lot of gluing in the corners and the seams just to fill it in. Yeah, this will give me something to do tonight when I work. A lot of hot gluing. A lot of hot gluing. A lot of hot gluing will take place tonight, believe me. For this is the way. Alright, so some of y'all are like, I mean, I'm just trying to get a podcast going, in all honesty. The concept and everything else behind it is just going to be something that, it's a concept idea. Trying to get a blog, and the one thing I want to do is a video in reference to say, you know, when it comes to the whole aspect of, let's just get rid of this, because I really don't need the vertical screen anymore. There we go. Fixed. Alright, so what you want from me is the gaming aspect of it, huh? Yeah, we can do gaming. If you really want the gaming. Let's see. Media source. Active. I'm just going to double check some settings before I go to the aspect of audio. Why is that one disabled? Alright, well, what I'm going to do.
Now here we go. Here you can see and believe me when we get there. I don't know why this device is not wanting to be the well, that's why. That's why. Because the default microphone is only one. And I have to go to the devices as a whole. So I have to go to sounds, more sound settings. Bye. Oh well, I got this big fancy thing here, and I guess this doesn't want to be used today. That's alright. My screen's gonna go funky, a donkey, a spunky, and a blunky. Now, all of a sudden my prime cable is like gone. And yes, my finger hurts just a little bit. Alright, so game. 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 Oh, yeah. It's interesting. My, Prime Cable mic does not show up ever since I disconnected my HD cam. Interesting, as they say. Alright. Let's switch to gaming. And just go from there. Yeah, I'll just disconnect that because I don't think it needs to be plugged in any longer. Okay. Alright, so what do I want to play today? Oh, we got a new map. Demonologist. Without a doubt. Where I am. Cell reception sucks. The circle of life, Simba. The circle of life. Also depends on where you leave it too.
But I find that, yeah.
Oh.
I can't. You cut? Just kidding.
Do them squats now, come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come on, keep it going.
That's what I can do.
Yeah, I found that earlier I went here medium.
Oh shit.
I don't know the upstairs and it's laying, but
Really?
it's just like it's like a loft. Like a little top around together.
So it's an orgy-friendly ghost. An orgy-friendly ghost. Oh, okay, go now.
I hate you, ghost. Does someone want to take the UV light? Because I have flash and UV, then you can UV light.
Hey, ghost, where are you? Where are you, ghost? Are you anyone here? Are you here? Can you give me a sign? Can you knock? Ghost, where are you? Where are you, Ghost? Did you check the basement yet?
What was that?
So. Ghost, where are you? Where are you? Ghost, are you down here? Where are you? Where are you? Hold on. Where are you? No.
You okay? Sure.
Where are you? Over here? Toya! Magna! 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 Oh, that's lovely. I had that.
Wow, where?
Lovely.
Yo, I can take one of this book.
Oh, I was the only one that Can you give me a sign? Can you give me a sign, Ghost? Yeah. Or wherever you are. Can you throw something across the room? Oh, it's basement, Ghost.
Nice.
Are you down here? Where are you? Are you? Are you around? Tomacitas, mira, vida dos. Well, that's not pretty. Where are you? I probably shot now. Where are you? Hello. So there you're in. If I stay, you're attach themselves. No, here's go. What, did you just
I opened up.
And this side, you take the no.
Oh, yeah, she.
Oh, nice.
Get my ass to death. So, shorty and top. The evidence. Me. Oh, the pentagram. Sure. It'll be a little big. I think they added a few here too. Not always. Fine. If they put that one room in the corner, which way room is. So we all leave to good and around.
This should be all.
Scooby-Doo. Where are you?
No, it's part of the building. You just have to log it.
Yes.
Anyway,
Let's see what I got for Hula.
Candle. Okay, candle. Sorry. And it's supposed to put in candles, and just outside and blow up.
One level, I guess, at the house. One game, we got it. Meow, meow. How's it with the server hopping right now? Oh, there we go. Everybody's out yet? Go. Wait, maybe.
Yeah, that's me.
That's true. That's it's nearly 15 and 10. Sweet. Alright. We stay even. Okay, fine. Make sure everything goes over. That's it for now. I don't agree. So, over here. Right. Over here. What was the last one? I don't know if they turn breakfast. Maybe French. Alright, I'll do some fast one. Alright, let's back way over here. There we go. Go for this one. There we go. Oh, this is first time. I'll try the first one. Unbelievable. Sorry. So the train's not moving. Yeah. Maybe one of the neighbors. It's not in it. It has a direction. They have the left side of the property, or left side over here. Yeah. It's left side, it's left, really back. Like I said, I'm right quickly. Right up. Think that I think picture. Yeah, he's style Raxo. It was a neighbor. Well, I got that. There's actually right. I think there's right. Right, actually, map them. That's not probably. I don't hear it. Because I'm just getting engaged right now, but I'm not. I'm going to have to do that timing. Thank you.